first of all, a great welcome, all of you. Thank you for taking time out from your schedules. I know that yesterday was the budget day, and everybody was occupied, especially from a wealth management perspective. I understand that. But we are not having a session on budget. While people there have already asked me, can you get some budget? Because obviously people are seeing markets yesterday, upar, niche. Again, the same day, same thing happened today itself. So while we are not getting to Adani stocks for sure, but then we are getting to talent race on the wealth management. And everybody knows that wealth management and the relationship management, the priority, the entire wealth per se, is the buzzword right now in the BFSI sector. Right? I was just reading the BCG report, that Boston Consulting report was telling that by 25 in 2000 in last 3 to 5 years, and by 25 we are expecting a 75% growth in terms of HNI, a 69% growth in terms of ultra HNI, 9 million people on the mass affluent side of it. So everybody is obviously getting rich thanks to our Modi ji and thanks to everyone here making so much of money. But I think one thing which is scarce and which is a constraint is talent, frankly. And while if you ask me right now, I'm not getting into what I typically do here, and you all any which ways know, but from perspective, why do you think, as in one, obviously the industry is going great, and Manish, we may start with you, the industry is going great, and why do you see so much talent, as in people would want to get into this kind of role, but they're not getting it, right? People there are, and I know for sure because we do a lot of these set of courses, people would want to, but then you are, as in the industry is very selective about taking people in. But at the same time, they want a lot of people. What is that industry wants? And maybe if you can just start with that.
Yeah. First of all, Gaurav, I think a little more perspective. While we all know that Indian economy is growing faster from the 10th largest economy, we are now the 5th largest and expected to become maybe the 3rd largest soon, from a 3.5 trillion to a 5 trillion. One shift which is happening in the BFSI space is, particularly the sector which you were talking about, is the financialization of savings. So Indian investors from traditionally who are investors in physical real estate and gold are now getting into products like mutual funds, and no surprise that mutual fund industry is now almost 40 lakh crores with a CAGR of 20-25%. And of course, these are not simple products. As you know, the financial awareness in the Indian markets, or for that matter, any markets in the world, is not really up to the mark. And particularly for the affluent and the HNI segment, you need a lot of hand-holding. And that's where the role of the wealth managers or the relationship managers become extremely important. And I think the kind of skill set which is needed to perform this role is no longer simple. COVID has been a kind of a reset. The expectations of the customers have changed and got to another level. This forum is talking a lot of technology. There's a total change in the way customers are having their expectations from you. And similarly from the bankers, the expectation levels have gone up. So at any time the customer needs an access to his relationship manager, we live in a VUCA world. Not only the relationship managers and wealth RMs are supposed to know what is happening in the market, but they need to be giving more contextual and personalized solutions which are apt for the affluent segment. So I think while you are saying the demand is there, we are seeing that the industry is going to grow at 20-25%. As the economy grows, the HNIs, the affluent, the mass affluents, they're all going to grow. The demand for the talent is there. The skill set needed, as I said, have gone really up. RM should have an understanding on various complex products. You are seeing the growth in the alternate space. When I say the alternate space, you're talking about products like PMS, AIFs. So the skill set needed is high. So I think the challenge is, how do you really create that supply in line of the impending demand? And I think what we really need is a quality talent here. While digitization has caused a lot of democratization of the industry, but in the affluent and the HNI segment, the RM assisted engagement is very important. At the end of the day, the customer experience is to a great extent determined by the relationship and the wealth manager. So my answer to your question would be that the skill set needed to perform these roles have gone multiple fold higher. The skill sets are complex, but our ability to churn that supply is what is a matter of challenge.
Thanks, Manish. So Virendra, on the same lines, frankly, if you ask me, so we're not talking about a normal talent. We're talking about a slightly mature talent here, right? Who can get into these complexities of the world. But from a perspective, if you ask me, what are those top talent-related challenges which you as an organization face? Because being a PSU, a behemoth with 8,000 branches, obviously there's a very, very different talent challenges which you would have versus what Manish or Satheesh would have.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks Gaurav and the NIIT for inviting us here. I think it's a pleasure to be here and, happy to share the space with our esteemed panelists. Manish gave this context in terms of the, ever-growing the wealth management space. And, it's a very dynamic industry because there is constant flow of news and updates which keeps happening. And the wealth manager at the forefront is expected to be completely updated about these things. Now, in the context of what we spoke in terms of the whole growth, the challenges in terms of pure talent are threefold. But before I reach there, if you look at the evolution of the wealth management industry in the country, it's actually happened in three big phases, right? In the first phase, this was the forte of only foreign banks because of their global expertise and the edge on technology and talent available at that point of time. Somewhere around the global financial crisis, they lost that edge because of their parental problems. And simultaneously, then the Indian banks and some of the boutique shops really sort of started spreading their wings and growing faster. And as this happened, as we can see now, the third phase of it is the emergence of the fintechs and public sector banks like ours are also getting active on it. Now, when you look at this evolution, one common theme across is that the demand for the talent kept on increasing because the pie is growing for everybody, but somehow the supply has not kept place in tandem. And that is real where the challenge comes in. So you have a gap of experienced, talented people who can understand all of these things because you may be talented, but there are certain things come with experience. And experience comes with time. And then the moment you have time and experience, you get a premium. And then there are these big daddies already in the industry who are ready to pay premium. So there is a gap between the supply and demand. For a bank like ours, who has presence across the nook and corner of the country, one of our challenges is also that the availability of these experienced talent is concentrated in tier 1 cities, right? So when we want to spread our tentacles and go into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities and really talk about Bharat, in addition to what we already have a presence in the bigger cities, we do not have that availability of experienced talent. So that's, the second big talent. And the third, I think, a bigger challenge is also, while the domain expertise is there in many people, but as we have more number of people requiring, the soft skills, because, we spoke about, the relationship manager or the wealth manager is catering to the affluent segment, there are certain soft skills needed in terms of communication, in terms of negotiations, right? I mean, Charlie Munger, the way he said about the mental models, you really need to have understanding of psychology, history, about what's happening in the economics. So if you tie in all put together, that is, where we have this mature talent needed. And, for a bank like us, many of us take salaries, for example, as granted, because when you look at actually, when we put it on the framework, some amazing revelation happens, right? Psychologically, when you look at it, why should people with similar vintage, similar skill sets, similar performance have differential salaries? Now, this is given for granted when you look at the industry at large. But when I look at from the spectrum of a public sector bank, why should there be this gap, right? So this is first time for a public sector bank, because when we are hiring people from wealth management, there's this whole concept of differential salary for every individual with very similar background, similar skill set, similar type of performance, right? I can understand the variable can change. Variable again is a very new concept because 80,000 employees are not eligible for any variable or bonus, and you have these 300-400 people who have double the salary of a branch manager and also have incentives and variable on top of that. So I think there is, getting these people to culturally align with the reality, is the, second challenge. But I think at large, as we grow, the leap to take probably is also from, we have a lot of IT people sitting here. We don't have a concept called as bench in the wealth management industry, right? And there is no scope considering the margins we have for a bench, right? But that is a phenomenal way to get people ready for the next level of roles or keep updating, reskilling. I think the IT team probably has done the industry has done a far better job in terms of reskilling. And I think somewhere we lack, and that's another big challenge.
Thank you so much. Those are like really, really apt. Satheesh, coming to you, frankly, Axis is one organization and one bank which is very progressive in terms of this addressing those skills which what Manish and Virendra just spoke about. So for each and every RM, you have a chartered plan for 1 year. You have multiple certifications across. So those are from the skill side of it, and I'm sure there are things going on. So we would rather want to understand from you specifically that how has it benefited the bank, and do you see an increase in productivity for these set of RMs where there was a proper skilling roadmap which was done for them?
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav, and I must also take this opportunity to thank NIIT on behalf of Axis for really inviting us. We've had this partnership with NIIT, I think now for over 2.5 years, and we are partnering on really expanding the pie, so to speak. Both Manish and Virendra spoke of the need for this industry to get the right talent, and I think the Confluence is rightly titled, we are in a broken talent environment. So I think if I have to step back and share with everyone, we've really benefited with this partnership with NIIT, where we have been able to work on over 31,000 employees of ours, leveraging technology as the media and the right functional interventions, right? And we've designed curriculums for different cohorts of people depending on the segment of customers that they serve. So I think that is one clear method to do this. But even from a larger standpoint, I think we are at a very unique time. Manish spoke of the fact that India is clearly on the cusp of change. A $3 trillion economy is well on its way. We are the fastest growing economy globally. I think IMF shared that forecasts as well over the next 3 years. India is set to grow fastest. So this, what is currently broken will get even more broken, because it is naturally a space for more competitors to come and increase the demand side of the equation for talent, and supply is what it is. You cannot create let's say a 20-year WorkX wealth manager today, right? You've got to go back 20 years, and there is that limited supply. That's one. Second is, I think what it is leading to is cost to income, which is a critical business metric for all of us. That is getting impaired as each of the banks are bidding, and Virendra spoke about how there is a dichotomy in the price point of wealth RMs and between perhaps more experienced branch heads in a public sector bank. Clearly it is causing dichotomy. So we are grappling with many such complexities, and even in a bank like ours, where we have the freedom to price appropriately, as the industry prices up talent, cost to income becomes a huge, let's say, a topic to really get our action and get our act right. So the way we are going about this is we are very mindful of paying the right price for the right talent, and more importantly, looking at talent's winnings, so to speak, from a much more 360-degree angle. It is not only about the money. And I can tell you that whenever I interact with a set of people and I find a bunch saying that all I care for is money, to me it is a big red flag, especially as bankers, right? If somebody has money as their motive, it's a clear danger sign, especially in the banking industry. So sorry about that. I think so. What we are trying to do, therefore, is build a career roadmap which is much more 360 degrees. We are looking at what can we do in terms of. In fact, by the way, we have a program in the bank. We are calling it the Learning Passport, and very relevant from a wealth management industry standpoint, because a lot of these regulations, taxation rules, what is right asset allocation change quite rapidly. So we are, in a concept sense, designing it like a passport thinking, that these visas are provided to sell a particular product. They have a certain time frame for validity. After that time, you need to actually reskill yourself. So it's very important that the DNA that the organization absorbs is of a perennial learner. And that is the DNA that we want to indoctrinate all our employees with. And hiring for obviously the right attitude and aptitude becomes very important. And which is why I think institutions like NIIT will have a very strong role to play in the years ahead, much more. Because I can say that multiple industries are gasping for breath because the growth opportunity is there in the marketplace. And finally, the product is the people, right? Whether you want, the classic model for looking at, how the business stacks up. We look at product, we look at process, we look at people, we look at the tech platform. But if you, at a slightly higher level think, the product is designed by great talent. The process is again designed by great talent. And wherever we find talent becomes uninvolved, that's when problem starts. Because, we deal with customers. The most sacred part of that customer's, pursuit throughout his life is the wealth that he or she has created. So if that money is not treated as a sacred duty, we will collapse as an industry. And so I think the right value system, ingraining the right knowledge, the right habits, all of this become central to how we maneuver and steward the future ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Satheesh. Frankly, that was really nice. But at the same time, now that was about broken talent. If you actually look at it from the digital side of it, because that's the other piece. Now there are so many plethoras of platforms, right? Every second day you hear of fintech which is coming over, which is in the distribution of equity or in the distribution of mutual funds and everything. And frankly, Kotak is a strong franchise, and they are having a good play and big play in the customer experience side of thing. Now, how do you sink in, Manish, that okay, today is my customer who's a Kotak customer. Tomorrow he may absorb into some of these digital platforms and everything. How do you ensure the succession or the continuity is pretty much maintained for a customer? Because tomorrow he may just switch it over. And like I said, even the PSU banks, and they are aggressively following this wealth management path. And if they get into this, because there's the same set of customers who are there in some of these private banks. So how do you ensure that continuity?
Yeah, Gaurav, well said. I think wealth tech has actually, if I may say, democratized the entire industry on the investment side. So it's no longer that today wealth management is restricted to the confines of affluent or the HNI customers. Today, because thanks to these tech platforms on which you can transact as conveniently as you can on any other tech platform, it's very convenient to consume the mutual funds and other financial assets. So I think the challenge is that how are you addressing it? So I can tell you at the bank, we have 3 large pools. So clearly at the upper tier is the HNI customers, which are taken care of by Kotak Private. Then we have the set of affluent customers, which is taken care of by a segment which is taking care of this mass affluent and the affluent customers. And then there are the customers which are the mass customers. So I think technology and digital space has impacted everyone. And so it's very important that we have kind of really invested in terms of upgrading our technology. I mean, COVID has been a kind of reset. Like I can tell you for the affluent customers, we are almost on the verge of launching a platform wherein, the customers can access his or her RM on video, voice or chat. So I think what we really need to see is that if we have the talent in all the three spaces, and in continuation to what Satheesh was mentioning, how do you really impart the skill set on a continuous basis? So a continuous learning reinforcement is a given, so that we can even kind of move the talent from one pool to the other. So the challenge is that we have the talent pools, but you need to kind of add the skill set so that they can move from, say, managing the mass and mass affluent to the HNIs. And that's where I think we are investing as an organization. I think continuous learning, as we mentioned, is a critical aspect. We have actually partnered with NIIT in some of the programs relating to the branch managers. In fact, Saurabh has been spearheading this. We've seen good results, and we are keen to follow it for the relationship set of managers. And we think that if we continuously invest on the skill set of these RMs, we can ensure longevity. One is it's a career progression, because if you're moving from one pool to the other, it's a clear career progression. And add to it, my sense is that the longevity will actually go to 2x. I mean, a typical RM who's 2.5 years in the system, we think that if you can have a kind of a process where you can move them from one pool to the other, you can increase the longevity of those set of RMs within the system, which is what is most important. And what Satheesh was mentioning, at the end of the day, trust is of essence and continuity is important. So if on the banking side, we have to ensure continuity, and we see that the customers don't move to, say, an independent financial advisor who's kind of constant there, we'll have to ensure that the longevity of the RMs is worked upon. And I think enhancement on the skill set, to that extent, reskilling the RMs in terms of using digital and technology for better productivity is important. But one thing is for sure, technology in the affluent and the HNI segment would be used to make the RMs productive and add to the customer convenience. On the mass wealth management, technology has been a disruptor in itself, wherein you have platforms wherein customers can do DIY, do-it-yourself journeys, and you don't need too much of an assistant. But still at the upper end, you will need that RM-assisted journeys and that hand-holding, which is important. So for example, if tomorrow the markets have an impact because of the budget, what do you really do? No amount of AI or tech solution is going to help you. You need that hand-holding, you need those discussions, because we are involved. I mean, this is about money. And I think it's very important from that point of view that there is a continuity there. And I think for ensuring continuity of the RMs, we need to invest in the skill set, enhancing their digital skills. We have had a program with one of the external vendors where we have ensured that all the relationship managers' digital quotient has been brought up, because it's very important to understand. One more thing which I want to share with everyone is that while we are talking wealth management, at banks, so many changes have happened because of technology. I mean, most of the processes are getting digitalized. Now, the relationship manager, to add that convenience factor to the customer, needs to be updating the customer about this. So I think we are also thinking of creating an academy where continuous learning is enforced and it's kind of worked upon, so that we can ensure that not only the wealth management products and what is happening in the markets, but also changes related to banking, and a continuous kind of learning environment is created for the relationship managers.
Thank you so much, Manish. And taking a cue from you, Manish, Virendra, see, so we have been obviously in discussion with multiple other PSU banks also, and we work with them. Now, everybody is following what you would have already done. So people are trying to see if Bank of Baroda is so successful in creating wealth management, because like Manish was saying, that it's all about trust and customer trust. And everybody knows that in PSU, the trust factor is the highest across, right? So while yes, everybody is following you and would and when people are obviously, and not just PSU, there are some other banks also who would want to know what you are doing on the wealth management space. But at the same time, how do you compete in the market? One, where to Manish and Satheesh's point that everything is getting digitalized, right? You would have to get into that digital model. People are looking for high-end products. People are looking for this thing, and you have a, a customer base which none of the other private banks would have, so to say, at least most of them. So how do you compete in that market, and how do you ensure that you win that trust that, okay, here I am as Bank of Baroda in the wealth management space, and why don't you park all your money to me? They've been doing business with you, but then I think there's, from a wealth side, they're parking money somewhere else. How do you do that, and what is the game plan for your RMs per se?
Yeah, so Gaurav, you're right. Almost 10% of India banks with us. Almost 15 crore accounts, right? And the scale is so large that obviously, like Manish was saying, then you do the segmentation, and basis the segmentation, you then stack people who are relevant for that segment in terms of knowledge, in terms of ability to manage relationships, right? So that's the first thing. Obviously, we've also done it, trying to do the segmentation, and we've got now 400 RMs who manage the affluent and the HNI segment. There is this whole technology play which I'll come in, and then we are in the process, in fact, of launching the private bank also with a $2 million and above cutoff, where is a different set of skill sets needed, and a whole new set of proposition which is needed. So purely from a scale-up perspective, I mean, our strategy is very simple. There are 2 T's and 2 P's. So technology and talent, and products and proposition for clients, right? And how do we now, go forward and compete in this, VUCA world and a, big boys club of the Kotaks and the Axis is very simple. It's been 113, 14 years for the bank to be here, and I worked in another bank. I think the trust level, like we spoke, is humongous, right? So there is a certain element of trust the customers have, saying that, okay, it's not a fair weather bank, right? Now, so trust is one pillar in the wealth management space, which automatically comes for us. The second piece is their knowledge. And while we spoke about wealth and other thing, and I'll come there, but how do we then inculcate the knowledge amongst the people who are there? So we have 2 sets of people. One set of people who we've hired externally from the bank, and then there are regular employees of the bank. And it is an amazing revelation for all of us that there is abundance of talent available within the bank because of lack of ecosystem or the exposure to the latest either technology or the product set. Somehow they've sort of not come out of their comfort level, I must say. So we now have close to about 1,500 wealth executives who are regular bank employees sitting in the branches and talking to clients. Now many of them, when I look at them, they are exceptional talent. So you need to give the right ecosystem to them, and you need to make sure that there is a certain amount of continuous training which is given, which we'll talk in detail. But competing in the marketplace, so there is an external talent, and then there is a huge pool of internal talent, which will keep growing as their exposure and their experience keeps growing. Because the good part about the regular employees is there is stickiness, right? So a large pool of people then can stay longer because their ability to understand these products becomes much better as they keep growing. But coming to talent is this, but technology wise, it's as simple as that so we are working with a few fintech firms and creating very nimble, agile, best in class platforms for both investment and insurance. And again, you can create a better user experience from a client perspective, or make the transactions or ease of transactions, which is in the norm by, which in fact the benchmark is pretty high now for put in by various fintech firms. But I think there is a whole angle of how to make the employee productive, right? So one is the external tech interface with the customer, but can we have an employee assisted journeys which can become more productive? And I think what we have done recently is that the more digital we become internally to the bank in terms of our processes, in terms of our systems, the inefficiency gap which we exists for a public sector bank vis-a-vis a private sector bank, drastically diminishes. And I think tech and digital efficiency in terms of processes, robust systems, you don't move forward unless the all information is filled. I think just changes the whole inefficiency part for us, makes it far more easier for the employee to understand this, and you gain a lot more because the leakage in the system goes away. And externally from a client perspective, for a universal bank like ours, if we can just get this whole value proposition in place, right? Let's say, for example, we are also launching wealth management in UAE, right? So we have a lot of NRI customers now who are wanting to invest in India, and many Indian investors are wanting to invest overseas. Now, these are cross-border opportunities because for a bank like us, we are present in 18 countries, right? So there's a whole new window of opportunity for both customers and for employee career progression, which opens up because now there is you couldn't have started a wealth management in UAE if you don't have a strong wealth management business in India. And UAE, we are present for the last 50 years, right? We are the only Indian bank which has a local license there. So everybody else will have to have a rep office or a DIFC presence. Now we have 6 branches. So we are the only foreign bank from a UAE perspective which has the largest 6 branches. We haven't done much. So we do retail lending there. We have a consumer loan in terms of home loan, car loan. So now the whole package, if you were to revive, suddenly it's a great proposition for NRIs and for some of our employees who want to then step out and do a career opportunity overseas.
Thank you so much, Virendra. That was really, really important and I think insightful. On the same lines, Satheesh, while we are talking about talent, I think the biggest challenge, apart from getting talent, is the attrition, right? Attrition is technically, at least for the private sector banks, and I'm sure now with the new franchise which you are talking about, I think there'll be the same challenge there as well. How are we tackling attrition? Because and we just heard Amitabh yesterday when he's talking about some 40+ percentage in attrition and all of that. So what are those 2-3 key strategies which you think maybe Axis would have deployed or would want to do so that to control part of this attrition? And the other thing I would also want to talk about from a diversity perspective. And we've had multiple leaders here and everybody's talking about that people in wealth management, the diversity is missing. How do you get into these two constraint factors?
Yeah, so I think it's a super important question. The entire industry is gripped with this problem of attrition. So, and clearly post-COVID, I would say that it is not only the banking industry which is seeing it, it's across industries. So when we examined this and we went back to the first principles, one of the first things that we recognize and we continue to work on is to firstly hire right. If you hire the right person for the wrong job or the wrong person for the right job, you have attrition, right? So I think enough attention is not paid, I think, fundamentally, in getting the right person recruited. And how does that change happen? If people with the right accountability, responsibility, seniority are part of the hiring process. So that is one critical piece that we are investing time and energy on to make sure that the person who is becoming part of our family at Axis is someone who is very aware of what he or she is getting into. So I think that is number one. Number two, I think I'm sure, at least since I know the other 3 of us on the panel right now, right? Most of us have worked in organizations for fairly long time. What is also changing with the new millennials is I think we as organizations need to be aware that what worked 20 years ago or 25 years ago or 30 years ago is no longer relevant. The way a young dynamic person is passing out from any college, and India produces millions of graduates, the way they perceive employment is very different from, let's say, the time people were passing out 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So a deeper understanding of what really gets them excited in terms of the right challenge, in terms of the right play of tech, right? I think one of the things we are really happy as a bank, the journey that we've embarked on, we've been talking about, I think the left hook and the right hook is a combination of tech and talent, right? If you want to win this bout of market share, you need to get this combo right. And one of the things that we've done to also make the employee more successful in our bank is we've created an app. We called it Siddhi. So all our relationship managers are today on that app in the bank. And that app enables them to take the bank with them, so to speak. In terms of, for example, if a customer wants to book a fixed deposit, let's say on a Sunday evening, because that's when the customer had time to take stock of his or her finances, we can make that happen. So the enablement becomes super critical for employees to like the organization. And organizations that are perceived as open, not bureaucratic, will tend to win over a period of time. So you cannot be, let's call it, caught up in the hierarchy. You've got to have an open mind where ideas win, where people who are closest to the customers, their voice is heard, for banks to therefore get onto a virtuous cycle. So that's how I would see it. It is a complex problem. It's easier said than done. But every day when we get to work, this is the problem we are perennially attempting to solve.
That would be all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I think it's time for taking any questions if we have. Anybody from the audience? Yeah, Raju.
You know, in many sectors where there's been acute talent shortage at points in time, we stretch left and right to see where are some unconventional sources. So I'm just wondering, I'm sure you people have thought of this, but if you look at the traditional money lenders of the past who are deep inside the small towns of India, who have a kind of a family genetic ability to understand, to build trust. Have you people been able to attract such people, or do you still look for the ISB, IIM types?
No, I can go first in this. We are very aware that, by the way, you're bang on. I mean, one is the ISB, IIMs have great value for the right segment of clients. So we are very mindful of, getting the right talent and getting them onto the right. But the scale that, let's say, Virendra spoke of, 10% of Indians have a bank account with Bank of Baroda. We have 3 crore savings account holders. And by the way, on the retail side, we have almost 5,000 branches, 50,000 odd employees. So we are looking beyond the conventional streams. The broking industry is a very close ally to spot talent easily in the wealth space. But over and beyond, I can tell you, for example, when the Jet Airways fiasco happened and many employees were looking for jobs from Jet, as an example, we were able to find a lot of talent from there at that point of time. So it is not necessarily limited to finance itself as a domain, because I think those skills, and if all of us think through, most elements of banking and wealth management is not so complicated. And in fact, the problems emerge when you start getting into the realm of complexity. So we found talent from, so to speak, the unconventional sectors, and we continue to have an open mind. And last I would say on this topic is, we believe that this assumption that years of experience is a surrogate to great skill again needs to be challenged. In the social media, YouTube, and multi-channel way of learning, I mean, if a 10-year-old is a genius in chess, I'm sure he can have the right mindset to handle multiple things. So you get the drift. What we therefore are trying to do is not get caught up in the conventional thinking. And otherwise, I think we won't be equipped at all to deal with the market forces that are going to come into play, which is already at play. Yeah.
Just to quickly add to him, even in my previous organization where I worked for pretty long, the success stories have been with people with background who are not necessarily from the top tier institutes. In fact, a very close experiment which we had done over a period of time in the bank was to look at people from hotel industry, look at people from, for example, when you need persuasive sales skills in insurance sales, it is proven that if you look at people who have a background of experience in Xerox or who have worked, the salesman who worked in a Eureka Forbes, they are far better in terms of their persuasion skills. The hotel management teaches you relationship management skills and, treat politely and so on and so forth. So we have enough number of examples, and in fact, when people join us from that, I think the hunger, the ambition, particularly since you mentioned, now that I'm seeing it in tier 2, tier 3 cities, is far more higher, right? And they want to prove themselves. If you give them the right platform and groom them a little bit, I think they can really do wonders. So I think, and if you look at the last 30 years of how India has evolved, two big shifts, right? IT and BFSI is blown out of proportion, and I think people have ridden the career path on that. So obviously, it's time tested that your educational background from a particular institute, or necessarily, like Satheesh was saying, defined experience is not the only criteria. I think, and that is one of the reasons why the industry has also been able to grow. It's just that I think in spite of all this, there is, the catch up of the supply side is still missing, and I think we need to do more of this.
Just 2 points to add to what both Virendra and Satheesh mentioned. See, look at this today. India is no longer, the wealth industry is not in the top 8 to 10 cities. We have 30% of the business now comes from the non-top 10 cities, right? And there are 100 locations in the country where the AUM of the mutual funds is greater than 2,000 crores. Now, if you were only going to focus on pedigree, right, what both the gentlemen said, it's going to be difficult to cater to the smaller towns, and I'm here talking about towns like an Amritsar, which has a 6,000 crore AUM, etc. Now you need talent over there. So I think the precedence has to be on the skill set. So it's important that we kind of, what Satheesh was mentioning, hire right, add the skill set, train them well, and deploy. So I think that's one of the things which we are doing at our bank in terms of ensuring that we get more pools of talent. And I think more important is skilling them right before we deploy them. Because as we said, we are talking about product which is money. And that's a very sensitive matter. So you need to ensure that the training element is injected right before they are kind of deployed and put on the jobs.
Super. Perfect. If we don't have any other questions, thank you so much, guys. It was really, really wonderful talking to all of you. Thank you so much.